Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March 21, 2023 Pasco Public Facilities District Board meeting. And I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the Pasco Public Facilities District Board meeting. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov under the Public Facilities District Board webpage. This meeting is also being televised on PSC-TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamlined on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and Microsoft Teams. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and/or questions by contacting the Pasco Public Facilities District Executive Director or the Pasco City Clerk. So then, Debbie, would you please read the recognition of visitors and public comments?
How about we call roll?
Okay, let's go ahead and call order first. Roll call.
All right. Ms. Bowdish? Leonard Dietrich?
Yes.
Marie Gillespie? Spencer Gillette?
Here.
And Mark Morissette.
Here. So we have a quorum and we can go forward. Okay, thank you very much. So now.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. So recognition of visitors and public comments. This item is provided to allow the public the opportunity to bring items to the attention of the Pasco Public Facilities District Board or to express an opinion about an issue. Its purpose is not to provide a venue for debate or for posing questions with the expectation of an immediate response. Some questions require consideration by the board over time and after deliberative process with input from a number of different resources. Some questions are best directed to staff members who have access to specific information. Public comments will normally be limited to 3 minutes by each speaker. Those with lengthy messages are invited to summarize their comments and or submit written information for consideration by the PPFD board outside of normal meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, approval of minutes. So I need a motion to approve the board February 2021 or February 21.
Mr. Morissette, perhaps you
Well,
want
this is going to be rugged today, isn't it?
perhaps ask if there is any public comment.
All right. Is there any public comment? All right. So hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve the board meeting minutes from February 21, 2023.
I move to approve the PPFD board minutes from the February 21st, 2023 meeting.
Leonard, all right, if you're willing, it looks like you're the second. All right, thank you very much. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the February 21, 2023 board meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And obviously there's no one here to vote no, so the motion carries. 4 and 5, we don't have any financial report today, do we, Matt? Okay, so items 4 and 5, the claims approval and the finance report. We can move on down to item 6, reports from committees. Is Marie going to be here?
I've not heard from Ms. Gillespie, but perhaps she will arrive. We do know that she does work at Hanford, and sometimes the traffic can be difficult.
So should we hold off on the design and construction committee report just for a little bit? Is that okay with everybody, and see if Marie shows up? All right, let's do that. Audit and finance committee report. So the audit and finance committee report, I asked the board members if they could please put some thought into our 2023 fiscal calendar. And are there any suggestions that need to be added to the calendar? Suggestions, corrections, modifications? My only question is regarding item number 8 and that letter of intent. Now, should we put that land letter of intent, should we bring that bar all the way across to December? Will there be other costs that may arise in this process? Instead of just having it during the months of May, June, and July?
I would note, letter of intent is exactly that, is if you were to choose particular property, there isn't necessarily a financial impact if you do a letter of intent. It would be if you were to be a purchase. So this is, I believe, a placeholder to show that you want to go with a particular piece of property.
So then should it number, we add one for the, whatever, due diligence purchase costs we may incur? Or do we want to add it, make a slash there to add any due diligence costs on the land?
I could add the term due diligence slash.
Could you please?
Absolutely.
Just as kind of a placeholder so that we can start working on our budget and our monthly cash flow projection. And then, is it fair to say then that, would you guess, and board members and Matt and Eric, was the land purchase you think gonna be in this year or next year? What would you guess?
I would suggest a land purchase. You would need that before you would proceed forward with design. So there would be a earlier, I would think that in this year timeframe would make sense.
In 2023?
Mm-hmm.
So then perhaps could we add a land purchase item, but maybe put it in the fourth quarter?
Could do that.
Okay.
And I'm not going to do it here at the moment.
No, you can, yeah, we can go ahead and I'll stumble through this meeting as is, so.
Okay.
And then also, at our next board meeting, there will be some sort of a financial report that we provided. Darcy?
Yes, we were actually just discussing that a little bit before the meeting started.
Great.
So in March, we'll get our first distribution of sales tax. And as we, discussed before, we can use that as kind of an indication of as a ballpark of what to expect, and then work on our budget as far as the interlocal agreement will hopefully be completed. We'll work towards hiring a staff member to help with the process moving forward and support the PFD well. We'll know more about potentially the owner's representative, and so we'll get those expenses built out so we can come back. I don't know, what is the next meeting?
I believe it's going to be on the
Sorry.
April 18th.
April 18th is when it is the third Tuesday of that month.
Okay.
And I know that there might be a question mark. Mr. Morissette might have a question later
Yes,
on.
I might have a question mark.
But it would still be in April.
Okay, very good.
So we can reach out to you and maybe have a meeting before then and go over some things and get a little bit of a plan and give a financial update like we normally do.
Before April the 18th?
We'll try.
Okay, no,
Does
so,
that sound-
we'll talk about this. Leonard, you go ahead, you're your pen.
Yeah, just a question on the report that comes from the state Department of Revenue. Is it pretty concise and there's no arguments? What do you do?
Yes, I'm able to go, they have a service where you can sign up and have access to it, so it's data that just comes from, is supplied to the city and gives information about the tax returns and tax receipts that were passed on. They flow, of course, from the business to the state and then back to us. And so it's all there. It's not really much haggling to be done or discussion, but it will give us information of the receipts and we can look at it and analyze where they're coming from.
Yeah, it's just basically a synopsis of here's where it came from.
Yes.
And here's the number.
Yes.
Regarding the money that the city of Pasco has advanced to the Public Facilities District, we will know what that total number is up through the end of March?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And keep in mind that on the 2023 fiscal calendar, that it is a high-level estimate, and it is subject to change. should we add an item on our fiscal calendar for some potential payback of that loan?
I think getting all the, knowing the revenue that we can anticipate coming in every month, and then some of more of those knowns or expectations on budgeted expenses, that can be a discussion that we have together and see what's the best path forward.
Okay.
So, but yes,
So
it's
then-
something to consider for sure.
Does that mean we would add perhaps a line item on here for some of that loan payback?
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so. How about when we meet and discuss kind of the budget, we can plan it into then?
Sure, okay.
Okay.
So Matt, if you kind of make a mental note of that, to add that on there, and that maybe would be like more towards the fourth quarter?
Well, I think also that, because we've been talking about it as a bridge loan.
Yes.
And you probably also noticed it's been absent. We haven't talked about it the past couple of months. I think one of the discussions we have been having is we're trying to measure the expectations of the sales tax coming in. There might be a possibility that we don't need to do the bridge loan, and that meaning that the PFD could make the city whole fairly quickly. So in terms of a bridge loan, that subject in it, those terms itself is a question mark, and that is, of course, different than the budget, larger
Sure.
picture process.
So this fiscal calendar, though, I saw it as trying to get our mind around what may be our costs for 2023. And we haven't developed the revenue side of the budget yet, and that's still to come. I understand the why of it. However, this is supposed to be just the cash outflow side. So if there is some perhaps ability to repay the city some of what they've advanced, then I'm just guessing the city would probably have other uses for those funds. And then another question I have, and this would be the revenue side of the budget, where are we at, and is this still continuing with the city providing an administrative support revenue to our budget? Is that still going on, or is that, so like, for example, on the city admin contract there, January, February, March, that's under our old operating, that we're now carrying over into 2023. So is that still revenue source continuing for that same period of time? Or is
If I understand your question, we're still doing at this point in time with the
Okay.
existing staff what has been done in the past.
Okay,
And then with the new interlocal agreement and more demands or needs to support, we'll hire a staff member and we'll have a new rate schedule that'll,
Well-
the cost will be augmented by charges to the PFD.
so covering some of these costs, though, will it come out of our sales tax revenue, or so basically that city support is gonna stop April 1st? You're just guessing?
I think
It's still gonna be the same services. The term, instead of, we've been using in this model, city admin contract is what we've been working under the de facto way of doing things. The ILA is what you're adopting tonight, and you'll notice on section 1 and 2 on the chart, it transitions to that as of March if you adopt the ILA.
Okay, so then, but the city's administrative support services, I think it was like, what, $600 a month? And is that gonna go away April the 1st?
no.
No,
It will not go away.
Okay.
And what has happened in the past to help support that is the sales tax that the city receives related to the regional PFD, and that will continue to happen and will still go into the PFD fund.
okay, all right, thank you. I think that's all my questions. Does anybody else have anything regarding the 2023 fiscal calendar? No? Okay, go
I'll
ahead.
just make a statement. It's gonna take a while to mush this thing together as far as the accounting side and the revenue and the expenses moving through it. It's not fluid, but it will get there, but later this year.
Oh, yes, we'll get it there this year, and the more things we know or better estimates we have, the ease, and people to help support the process, the changing process, the better.
Sure, yes,
it
thank
will
you.
be. So,
Because my
thank you.
concern is once we get into that fourth quarter, and if we got some big financial decisions, kind of need to know what that balance sheet looks like and the cash availability.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
It's doing
That's
good
kind
by
of my
then.
comment. I'd like to, as we move forward, start to see a balance sheet that shows some of our revenue and what we have
Yes.
available for our
I-
use.
My plan is that you'll see that on a monthly basis once your regular sales tax starts coming in. So, because it's going to make a big difference in what in the past, you've only seen it quarterly because there wasn't much activity, but activity will be happening monthly with a large sales tax revenue and then expenses to follow. So we want to give you that information on a monthly basis.
So then Darcy, a monthly financial report, that would be my favorite part of the agenda.
Oh, good. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So then Marie has stepped into the meeting. She's here. Marie, is there anything? We'll go back to the reports from the committees, the Design and Construction Committee. Anything for the committee to report?
There is nothing for the committee to report at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So then
And-
we move to,
And Mr. Morissette, we couldn't, of course, since we haven't, also Ms. Bowdish also arrived as well.
you're here. So did you want anything to add, Marie? You're the treasurer, to the Audit and Finance Committee report, or you're good with how it was given?
I'm good.
She's good. All right, thank you. All right, item number 7, old business. The February 21 meeting minutes mentioned in the old business that the update of the proposed interlocal agreement with the city of Pasco, that this item will return at the March 21st meeting. So here it is. I think at this point, it's a matter of approving the resolution 2023-03. And is there any, before I ask for a motion, are there any comments regarding the interlocal agreement, or are we ready to vote on this?
Mr. Morissette?
Yo,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, from the city staff's perspective, we've, as understood that this was heard at the February meeting.
right.
And staff has vetted through and helped craft this with Director Watkins. So it's amenable by city staff. Should the board this evening pass the resolution of approval, we have this slated to be heard with the city council on April 10th.
And if the board members are okay with it, if somebody could please read the motion? Spence?
I move to approve resolution number 2023-03 to establish the interlocal agreement between the Pasco Public Facilities District and the city of Pasco for administration, financial, and legal services.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So it's been moved by Spence and seconded by Leonard to approve resolution number 2023-03. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we'll go ahead and I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, signify by saying aye. And hearing no nays, the motion is approved. Which then takes us to new business. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I'm just checking Ms. Gillespie. With everybody else. Sorry.
That's okay. You're good, Marie? All right.
She actually had a question. Just want to make sure.
Okay. So then, the next item on under the agenda here is item number 8, new business, potential aquatic facilities location. And I see that there are people here that are willing, and thank you for being here in advance to give a presentation. Matt,
Good evening.
am I gonna lead
Afternoon.
this through, or are you gonna lead this through?
How about if I start off, and I'm looking forward to board member involvement on this one, and I'm gonna take my mask off for this portion just so that you can see me and so I can talk clearly. And also want to thank you for passing the interlocal agreement. I know that was a bit of time in coming, and thank also Pasco staff for working through that. It's, of course, important that the PFD compensate the city of Pasco, the wonderful partners to help out with all those services. And you're also getting a good deal because you're not having to reinvent the wheel and having to do all the things yourself. So I think it's going to be a beneficial arrangement. The subject tonight, the lion's share of it, is to take a look at some property. We have options in the city of Pasco to put an aquatics facility. And this evening, I'd like to review 4 particular pieces of property by 3 different landowners. And just as an overview, you've gotten packets of information that have included full-colored glossies of properties with some PowerPoint presentations. You're going to have presentations by the individual property owners or representatives. I also have some drone footage, and I would intend, if the idea of a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is then worth 1,000 pictures. And then also, we also have available tonight the city engineer, Mr. John Padvorik, who's also steeped in a lot of the properties in Pasco, is available for questions and answers as well. I'm not sure that you need to make a decision tonight, but I'm hopeful that you will have some ideas or thoughts of where you would like to locate an aquatics facility, and hopefully the 4 choices tonight, one would be the best fit for an aquatics facility. So with that, just an overview, you also have a very simplistic attempt to be objective summary, trying to compare and contrast the sites a little bit in front of you. And I think between that and the presentations that you'll get tonight, you'll hopefully have some good questions to ask and discussion to have. By way of lot, I didn't know which one to pick first, so I had clerk pick help me a randomized process. And the first presentation tonight will be the owners, the representatives Tim Ufkes and Austin Crawford for Broadmoor Developments, which you of course probably have heard about. I had a groundbreaking last week, and it is a large section of property, of nearly 600 acres. And then specifically, parts of it are what are called lots 19 and lots 22. They'll be presenting those this evening. I have 2 separate videos for those, and I'll start off by showing those particular properties, and then I'm imagining that Mr. Ufkes then will come up and kick off for that portion. And let me bring I will do lot 22 first, since that was the one I clicked on. Also, I want to say thank you to the Pasco Police Department. They have wonderful drones and went out and helped me actually did these for us, no charge to us. So great to have help from the police department on this. And what you're going to have is a slow orbit of a piece of property that's roughly 12 acres in size. As we're talking about this, I would suggest that you imagine to build an aquatics facility. When I brought up Linwood and Snohomish as examples, each one of those is in between the 4.5, 5-ish acres. Might suggest that you think about 6 acres as a target for an aquatics facility, possibly associated material, associated items with it. These 2 properties are well in excess of that, and so you're going to have to imagine. This particular property doesn't have any, or they don't have reference points, and that they're not built up yet. So when I do this orbit, just to say that it's pretty much in the middle of the property. This is lot 22, and I'll try and keep narration to a minimum, but you are now looking at Rattlesnake as it's going to the left. I think you can see Energy Northwest Cloud shifting to the north. Up there will be Santa Fe going from left to right, or west to east. You'll also see a couple people standing there, and that's myself and the police officer with the drone footage. And you'll see I-182 come in view, and that's the Road 100 exit. You'll see Young's Apartments across the way, which will be talked about a little bit later. The road nearest the interstate is Harris Road. That road will remain. There will end up becoming a Road 108, which will end up coming onto the right of our frame. And as the southwest corner of the lot is roughly across from that house over there. You also see now there will be a road that goes from north to south, and that's the road 108. That's also where their sewer line is at. And of course, this property is going to be leveled as a part of the larger project. So that kind of gives you just a little bit of a sense of lot 22. And I'm going to back up, and lot 19 is north of lot 22. It would share Road 108 and also is a similar size piece of property. It has a little bit more topography in it right now. Right now it's being used by the irrigation district for some overflow. Of course, will not be there when this property is developed. Again, you see Richland in the distance, the gravel pit, you can see that as well. And as we rotate around a little farther, this would be much closer to where Sandifer, which will be a major road going from east to west, will occur. And I believe you're going to start to see stuff on Broadmoor on the right. And if you look, you're going to end up seeing probably the water tower and the flag, and that roughly will be in alignment to about Sandifer off to the center of the screen now. A slow pan of lots 19 and 22, and that hopefully will be a good segue to Mr. Tim Ufkes.
Make sure everybody got a copy of the flyers as well.
We're good. Go ahead, please. It's all yours.
So if you, I'm Tim Ufkes. Tim Ufkes with Marcus and Millichap. I represent Dale and Kathy Adams on the 700 acres that you can see in the red, the blue, the green, the yellow outline, and then also the entirety of lot 16 and the government lots to the west, roughly 700 acres in size, and called Broadmoor properties. So the lots that we're talking about here would be 22 in blue, closest to 182, and then lot 19 to the north, which would be the intersection of Road 108 or Harris Realigned and Sandifer Boulevard, so on that hard corner. That's roughly about 20 acres. Lot 22, I believe, is 13 acres. 12 acres. Yeah, 13 acres on lot 22. There is plans for an overpass, which would be sometime in the future, that would then connect South Pasco with basically West Pasco, in essence. So, the land right now, lot 4, as you can see, that's not in contract. That's all commercial in the red. Lot 10 is under contract. I have signed letters of intent on everything that's in green. Lot 3 is about to close at the end of this month. Lot 8, of course, is closed. It's 50 acres. It's single family. So in the entirety of this, there are roughly 7,000 rooftops that will be here, located here. And so the thought is the Aquatics Center would be something that would have freeway visibility and be close to basically all of the retail and the amenities within the Broadmoor development. Does anybody have any questions?
So lot 16 is going to be what, perhaps, in the future?
The 16 is what we're calling phase 2, and so right now the gravel operation has finished taking aggregate. So there's no more aggregate to be taken out of it. But the batch plant, which you'll see to the west, there's 9 acres. Is somebody can put a hand on that? I don't know who's handling the,
Which one?
go to the west and you'll see the batch plant right there. That will remain. They're asking that their lease be extended so that they can provide gravel and cement to the entirety of the development. The remainder of that is under a reclamation plan. So they're working with Jason Maddox with PBS right now to reclaim this property. They'll end up being roughly a 30-acre lake, and most of that will be green space, will be parks and bike paths, and it'll be an amenity for the entirety of Pasco, and specifically this area within the Broadmoor development. This is one of the largest master plans in the country right now, the entirety of the 1,240-acre development. And as I'm sure you're aware, the city has annexed the 2,800 acres north of Burns. So there's a 30-inch sewer line that travels in the entirety of Harris Road, realigned on Road 108, all the way up and basically crosses Burns and will serve the 2,800 acres that's been annexed to the north. And there's now a 24-inch water line that's going up between lots 10, 13, and 11, and will then tie into Sandifer, go east, and then it'll travel north on Broadmoor Boulevard. So all the utilities will be in. The sewer line's in now, the water line in 2023. The TIF, which I'm sure you're aware of, the tax increment financing bond package, that will include the redevelopment of the freeway interchange, the entirety of Broadmoor Boulevard, the intersections of Sandifer and Broadmoor and Burns and Broadmoor, and then we'll cover the interior roads of Sandifer to Road 108 and Road 108 South, and then where the water line is intending to go, which is between lots 10 and 11 and 13. So a lot of development here over the next few years.
And again, just to make sure that my memory is correct, anything in light blue there is still available.
Well, so this was our original concept of commercial. The light blue was designated as mixed use, and the green as high density residential, and the yellow as low density residential. Those colors under the new master plan, which you should have a copy of as well, they've reclassified those colors somewhat. So if you have those, the red is commercial. The blue is now part of what they call mixed use, so it can be a number of different uses. You just require city approval for the change of use. And the green is now part of that same mixed use band as well. So the concept here is that the city wants 240 of the 1,240 acre master plan to be non-residential use. So retail, parks, bike paths, walking paths, any other use other than residential.
Does that include hotels?
Yes, it would include hotels as non-residential use. Yeah.
Did you say that 20 and 21 you've already got letters of intent on?
They do.
Are you at liberty to say what's going in there?
High density residential. So basically what we call garden style apartments, or 2 to 3 story wood frame construction, which is, by the way, that's the normal construction type in the Tri-Cities now. When you see apartment buildings, that's typically what you're looking at, is garden style apartments. There will be mixed use podium development here, more likely on lots 1, 2, and 29 and 30, and even potentially lot 19. There will also be hospital and type large clinics, medical clinics, typically on lots 6 and 12. We have a 60,000 square foot user right now on lot 6.
And 17, what would you guess would go in 17?
Commercial.
Commercial.
Yeah, could be mixed use as well though, because that's a 90-foot height restriction. That corner will be a high traffic flow corner. So lot 19 and or 22 is sort of in the center of the overall 1,240 acre master plan. That's why it's being discussed as far as an aquatics center and transportation hub.
Is this property under the restrictions of the I-82 overlay?
Well, I believe portions of it are. I'd have to defer to the city for that, city engineer specifically, to John.
Mr. Gillette, I got a nod from the city attorney that it is true.
Yeah.
So the road that's running south of, of lot 22 and 30, right now it's a 2-lane road?
That's Harris, correct.
Yeah, Harris. And then
That'll remain, by the way.
it'll remain a 2-lane?
Yeah, what'll happen is, let me just take real quick. This dogleg portion will be eliminated. And so there will be no access out of Harris onto Broadmoor any longer. Harris will turn north on Road 108. That'll be the main road through the property along with Sandifer Boulevard, or Parkway. However, Harris will remain as a feeder road up to this, basically into lot 10, but also between lot 10, 11, and 13. And that's where the 24-inch water line will be going in. So that's part of the TIF project as well.
So then the Sandifer is gonna continue westbound on the north side of 19?
All the way to the river.
All the way to the river?
So Sandifer will come through, yep, and follow, and then all the way through the Gallant's property to the river.
And is it gonna be 2 or 4 lanes? How's that, or is it a 3-lane with that middle?
Sandifer,
Yes,
it'll be, I believe it's 5 lanes.
5 lanes?
John? Jessica?
On the west side of 19 or the east side of 19? Joint, okay.
Yeah.
Into the 3-lane.
So 3 lanes through here.
And 8 is going to be residential? Or it is already, is that?
8's under
That's under
development
development
now,
right.
50 acres. It's 222 single-family homes. 3 is closing at the end of the month. That's a total of 414 multifamily units, but 180 of those are under the brand of Affinity. There's one in Southridge, and there's also one in Richland as well. It's a 55-plus active adult community. Very nice.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
And then again, 20 is going to be the hotel motel.
No, 20 would be multifamily as well. Now, those are letters of intent. They've not been accepted yet, but we do have letters of intent on 20 and 21.
So where was the hotel motel gonna go?
Well,
Or not at all, I
likely
heard
where
you-
you'll see hotel will be on the hard corner. That could be 12, 19, 17, 6. 19 was originally designed for the Transit Authority, and they were going to do a large mixed-use project along with their transportation hub.
Are they still committed to doing that?
Yes, at least verbally at this point.
How much of that property are they gonna take up?
10 acres.
Out of
20.
Out of 20, huh?
Yeah, there was some thought about the Aquatics Center sharing parking lots with the transportation hub for shared amenities, basically. And we can move those lots around to accommodate that too. Nothing's set in stone right now in that corridor.
Tim, question, if you don't mind. 19 and 22 have a little bit of a different look and feel, and you have some experience in this. If you were to locate an aquatic facility, what would you see to the pros and cons of either 19 or 22?
Well, again, I think it depends on whether you share common amenities, parking, for instance. You might want to locate closer to the main intersection of 19. 22 has a great deal of freeway visibility, so there is that benefit. If you're really wanting to be in the center of all the housing, because that's going to be most of the families and the kids that basically are using the Aquatic Center, along with the balance of the entirety of Pasco, and even outside of Pasco and the Tri-Cities. That's the center of the project, basically. I know that the Transportation Authority would like to be more in the center, just in terms of ingress and egress into the project. So I think that hard corner would be a good location, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of the locations, Lot 22 or Lot 19. And because they're all zoned mixed use, I mean, you could end up with 22 and 21 for that matter, if you're sharing facilities with the transit authority.
So we've talked about the east-west road. What about the north-south?
So the north-south road, that's Harris, that's Road 108.
And it will go all the way up to Dent,
It'll go all the way up to Burns.
to
Yeah.
Burns. Or, pardon me, Burns.
Yeah, and that'll be a main intersection through the project.
Okay.
I was also note too that, because Tim mentioned that there is, of course, the cooperation or City of Pasco is involved in this as well. And I think Zach could also chime in too, if there is the option for co-location of a public, or excuse me, a community facility, community center, excuse me, that's the word, community center. And also talking about a lot of things that are in play. Also, the Mid-Columbia Library is a factor as well.
Yeah, we look at the amount of land that would be needed for the Aquatics Center versus the amount of land that these lots are. The city would certainly be interested in partnering with a West Side Community Center. Mid-Columbia Libraries is also looking to put an additional west branch out or relocate their branch from Road 68 and Wrigley out to the Broadmoor area as well to serve those residents there. So there are some co-location advantages with some of the long-term city intents and ideas with regard to facilities and park spaces.
Zach, do you remember in the Ballard King study how much land they suggest we need for this?
Yeah, 6 acres for the Aquatic Center, both phases, including parking.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing I'll mention too is that there's a great deal of cooperation with Dale and Kathy Adams, who own the property now. They're quite thankful for the City of Pasco's involvement in the Broadmoor development, and there's a lot of flexibility here on their behalf.
So there is some potential that if we needed part of, let's say we wanted part of an adjacent lot, that could happen as well.
Now would be the time to do that. We've got so much interest in most of this development right now. It's I think we're going to have a 5-year sellout of the entirety of the Broadmoor development, and it'll be a 10-year development cycle for for all of the housing and everything else. There's demand now in the Tri-Cities that's not being met, both in single family and multifamily. Each of those about 1,000 units a year that's not being met. And if what we're hearing is true about additional funding coming to the cleanup, we're going to need both housing, both single family as well as multifamily.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Okay. And tell me, is the transit center decided for sure, or are they still deciding between 2 or 3 places?
That's a good question. I want to say that they're in a similar position that you are with multiple good sites, alternate sites available for consideration. But I think they would like to be near the Aquatic Center. They certainly like the concept of being, this is the center of a probably 20,000 population in Pasco. And if you take in the entirety of the 2,800 acres located north of Burns that has now been annexed, this is a large population center that's being created right in front of your eyes.
Is there any possibility of us communicating with the transit company?
Absolutely. I think conversations have already taken place.
Yes, Ms. Bowdish, I have been in contact and do continue to be in contact. The only thing I would augment is that,
We
I
could work together.
agree that
possibly.
there is a lot in flux here of what's happening, but it is getting more close to the time to make decisions in this area. Transit does absolutely want to have a next to or near an aquatics facility and vice versa. So the question mark, I think, will be if it's not a full-blown transfer center, there still is an option for a transit stop. So I think you're also going to see some question mark on transit if not 19 or 22, are they interested in possibly something closer over to Broadmoor, which is probably less amenable to the aquatics facility. But I think the magic formula is, can we would we be able to do a sort of a campus arrangement where we do have a Mid-Columbia Library branch, we do have an aquatics facility, we do have a transit transfer station, and an aquatics facility all right next to each other. That would be probably the ideal if we choose either of these properties.
Is there any potential siting of a school out there? Or has that even come up in the discussion?
There's been no discussion as far as
Okay.
schools. The schools are north of, the property owned by, I believe it's the high school, I believe is north of Burns.
Okay.
Right now, we've got flexibility to kind of move these lot lines around. These are basically, these parcel maps have been created and recorded. But they can actually be, the lines, Jason Maddox with PBS is the engineer, and these lines can be moved around to accommodate what your needs are specific to the Aquatics Center, as well as transportation hub and other uses such as a library.
What's the time frame for making the road improvements that you spoke of? Do you know?
I can defer that to John, actually, since he's here, but all the TIF improvements and other road improvements, either the TIF is handling it or it's being done by private owners. So, for instance, on Lot 3, they're going to be doing their own half-road improvements both to Burns as well as to Road 108 and on the south side, which is Buckingham. John?
So the city is working to figure out the timing of development synced with, or our TIF development synced with the private development effort as well. The city's effort is essentially funded by the increase in property taxes that occur as development occurs. So we want to time that closely with when development would actually start up so that we don't put in a road and then pay interest on it for 10 years before anything actually happens that would generate revenue for the city. So currently our plan is we actually have a grading plan that was already awarded to a contractor. So that was a groundbreaking a couple weeks ago, was starting that grading work. We'll be moving forward this summer with utility installation. And then my guess is that with the rate of private development I've seen, next year might be when the roads go in, is the current plan. But it's a little bit dynamic just depending on the timing of private development as well.
So if we're looking at opening the Aquatic Center in roughly 2 years, it sounds like these things would be completed at about the same time?
That's the current plan, yes.
Spence, your light is on. Are you any questions? Nope. Any more questions?
Thanks, John. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Marie.
You said the 16, the brown area, was phase 2 and it was green spaces?
That's roughly 205 acres. That's the entirety of the gray area that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. That would also include the batch plant, which eventually that land will be given back to the Adams, to Broadmoor Properties for future development. So, what the thought here is that we need to see American Rock's reclamation plan, which we don't have. Jason Maddox of PBS is also working on that plan now. We have to get a lot of material on the mass grading needs to get down to lot 16 so that American Rock can use that for the reclamation plan. And then of that 205 acres, roughly 100 acres would be for park space, the lake, bike trails, etc., open space. And then the balance of that would be single family, some multifamily, and also some commercial and hospitality down on the south edge of the property. So that's the intention at this point, but we haven't really done any even preliminary planning at this point because we don't have a copy yet of the reclamation plan. And that's why we call it phase 2.
Any more, Marie?
No.
You got your light on there. Okay. Are there any more questions or comments for either Tim or for Austin? If there's none, Matt, does it go back to you or Austin, was there anything you wanted to say? Go ahead.
No, I didn't jump up here, but I'm happy to answer any questions you guys as well. He knows
just as much as more as I do.
Well, very good. It's good you're here. I think we're okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Then Matt, it goes back to you.
The second piece of property, or call it the third, I guess, this evening, is item B. I'm calling it Young's, but I also know that they have we have Nick Wright here this evening, and he has a piece of property next door to an apartment complex. This is on the south side of 182. You also heard talk about Road 108 overpass. There is potential for an overpass here. If not, I believe Summary would also be a good place for an aquatics facility, is the notion, next door to an apartment complex. This is a much smaller piece of property. It's easier to reference compared to existing landmarks. This is, as we spin around here, of course, you're seeing 182. We're moving more to the east, and we'll end up zooming up a little bit, and you'll be able to see Broadmoor and then also Chapel Hill Boulevard, and just about in a second, right about now, come on up. There we go. You'll see that's the end of Chapel Hill, and there's a CPA firm right over there in the corner if anybody recognizes that. And this particular piece of property is on the smallish side. We could cram a facility on it. Do note also that there is a underground irrigation line under here that could potentially be parking lot but not have a building built over it. This also has excellent view of 182, especially if you're coming from Richland into Pasco. And this would be a possible area for an aquatics facility as well. And with that, I would hand it off to Nick Wright.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Wright, and I represent the Young family who own this particular piece of land in West Pasco. Am I able to use this?
Yes.
So as we saw in the drone footage, that it has great visibility from 182 as you're coming into Pasco from Richland. Very easy access from the Road 100 off-ramp from either direction, either eastbound or westbound. This is a drone shot that gives a better view of the boundary lines of the property. I think I have one more. This is looking into Richland. Just kind of gives your perspective of where the property's at. So our current property is 3.9 acres, and then as you'll see on the next slide, the Franklin Irrigation District also has roughly an acre directly south where the canal used to be, but they have since buried the canal and put in a transmission line through there. Also of note, several of the properties around here are all zoned commercial, which would, as Matt had brought up in the past, that you guys would be looking for a location that can also serve other commercial uses as well. So there'd be plenty of room for your libraries and transit facilities, etc. So this land here in yellow is our particular land, and then this section is in red, which is roughly 1 acre, could bring the site to almost 5 acres. This down here, a couple years ago, we had worked with the Franklin Irrigation District because the Young family owns the Broadmoor apartments next door, and we were looking at expanding and building more apartments. As you'll notice, this site kind of has a unique shape to it as it comes down to Chapel Hill. And as part of that, when we were designing our apartments, there was a road for access that would actually go over the irrigation district's pipeline. They weren't super keen on a private developer having a private drive over a pipeline, but they did specifically mention that if it were a municipality, it would be a different situation, as the city of Pasco has several miles of road with irrigation pipe underneath it, and you guys obviously have a good working relationship with each other. So at that time, we put the apartment project on hold, and then when we heard that the city was potentially looking for a site for an aquatic center, we reached out to the city and said, well, since we are having some access issues with Franklin Irrigation, maybe be better suited for the city, who could then work with Franklin Irrigation on that. 2 weeks ago, unbeknownst to us, the city came and mentioned to us that potentially there's going to be an overpass that would make it so that this site would not work for you guys. And so this was kind of late in the game for us, but according to the city, and John could speak to this as well, hopefully in the next month or two, they're currently working with their consultant, and they'll be able to better pinpoint exactly where this overpass is going to cross the freeway. At the current location that they're anticipating, it would basically cut the site in half, in which case, obviously, it would be much too small for an aquatic center. However, if this were by chance realigned in some way, it could potentially be a better benefit for the aquatic center in that it would have great access from Tim's property to the north and crossing down across the freeway and then onto the aquatic center site. And then just a brief history. The Young family, you may recognize the name Robert Young and Associates. They've been developers in the Tri-Cities for decades, have several properties that they've developed and built themselves or purchased. And they too would be very excited to participate and work with the city in providing amenities such as Aquatic Center in the Tri-Cities. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Just one question so far.
Yeah.
So the water line from the irrigation district, how deep does that run underground?
I don't know for sure.
Just guess.
I believe it's probably 4 feet. It also sits lower than our site, so it could be filled if you were to develop this site. It's probably 4 or 5 feet lower than our site.
So the district may potentially have to deal with this water, this pipe being not all that far underground, and then also this potential overpass?
I think that that the ground is at the lowest point that it would ever be for development. So I think if anything were to be developed, it'd more than anything be built up because it does drop off from the surrounding land.
Okay, thank you.
A question on, could you identify where that line, or closely where that irrigation line is?
Yeah, Matt, how do I go back? I'll let you do it. Yeah, so actually go to the next one with the red. I can click here. So they have a access road that currently goes over it, and the pipe is buried underneath that access road. I would say in this red area, it's more towards the top red line. It's offset towards the north.
Okay.
But again, this site here sits a little bit higher than, it's probably 4 or 5 feet higher than this road that runs down here.
I'm just trying to get an idea as to where it was located so that I could make.
Yeah, so again, and as Matt mentioned, if Franklin Irrigation and the city were able to come to terms, this site could be used for parking, green space. You just couldn't put any structure or anything over it.
Okay.
Question, the potential overpass, the north end of that ties into what road? I can't.
Road
quite read.
108.
Okay.
Yes.
So that lot,
So the lot that Tim was referencing, Tim, is that right here?
Where the cursor at is roughly the center of lot 22.
that, I thought lot 22 was to the east of that. Okay.
I don't know if that's quite how we'd refer to John and how that road's gonna align with the overpass on there. I think there is some adjustment to the alignment of Road 108 and basically what will be the continuation of Harris. Maybe John can speak to that a little more on that.
I'll suggest that, John, if you just kind of make some mental notes, if you hear any questions, and if you could come up at the end perhaps, if there's anything needs to be resolved.
And so again, in talking with John, They're in talks with their consultant, and hopefully within the next month or two, they should have a better idea of the final layout location at least.
Any further comments, questions? All right, if none,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Can I ask a question of the Broadmoor people real quick?
Sure.
So Road 108 runs between lot 22 and lot 30?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it runs,
If you open the second page, go to the interior. This is kind of transposed over it, but it's a little more straight here. So here's the intersection of the overpass would be.
Oh,
This
gotcha.
is the lot that Nick was just talking about.
Yeah,
Here's 22 and 19. So
gotcha.
the road will continue.
Thank you.
So that's the expense, it's gonna connect with, Center.
So that this is a better. The color picture is a little bit more transposed. This is a little more. Can you move it so you can see this intersection here?
yeah, if it can go up. Matt,
Here we go.
you can raise that.
Can I run it? I got it. Oh, are we fighting? There we go.
Oh, she goes.
There you go,
There we go.
right there.
So really, yeah, so Road 108 runs here. This is the extension of Sandifer. So if you drive Broadmoor today, they are grading this road out. There's a lot of dirt's been moved. It looks very different than it did the past forever. So this is going to extend out, continue down here. Harris Road is that kind of little dogleg right there that you can take a turn and risk your life going left there today. That'll go out. That is going to be continued up into Sandifer. So that'll be the main intersection and kind of the main drive through there. So we talked about the 5-lane road, which will condense here to 3 because you're going to be past the main, your commercial big box guys, a lot of the names that you see here in town and some of those which you don't. And then continued through here will be more multifamily stuff. But this will be the more north-south connector through there, up all the way through to Burns. A little mood music for you.
Going to Mass.
But yes, so 22, they're on the west side of what will be Road 108 and the eventual kind of connection to Chapel Hill across the highway there at some point.
Is there a reason that Road 108 makes a turn like it does? Why doesn't it come straight into Harris?
So that's where we kind of wanted to, maybe, John, you want to jump up here now, maybe you can talk a little bit more. This was more in alignment with the lots that we had laid out. I do think there is probably more conversation behind the scenes beyond us about how that works because there's smarter people at play.
Different people. So currently, we're actually working on relining Road 108 slightly so that instead of taking a sweep to the east, it will turn and have a T intersection with Harris Road. And the lots would be revised accordingly.
So it'll swoop to the east.
It'll swoop a little bit to the
Yes.
east, yes, and then have a T roughly right here. And that'll set us up to, in the future, be able to construct the overpass. So just a little bit of fine tuning of the lots based off of what we're understanding the overpass requirements. Yeah. And then regarding the overpass, because it's obviously very impactful on a property owner. So the city's performing a study that will look at the geometric requirements for the overpass in terms of width of property, so usually the abutments and then fill and then the overpass up top. And we'll be looking at how we can situate that to minimize impacts to private property owners and then also take into account just geometric transportation engineering requirements, site topography, things like that. So within 2 to 3 months, we'll have about a 10% design, which will be enough that we can figure out if there are multiple locations that would work. We can coordinate obviously with property owners to see what we can figure out. But in a little bit here, we'll be able to give a little bit more information about exactly where that is. But right now, we already checked grades and checked rough alignment, and it probably will be somewhere near the middle of the parcel that Nick's you're representing.
You're keying in on a good point here, as there is a lot of moving parts, and especially this project is a very large project, and as is West Pasco is very active. So I think your questions are good ones, and they're that larger context, a lot going on in Pasco. With that, then we go to the next one. Last but not least, and I apologize for the technical difficulty earlier, I was playing some other videos. Fourth and final property for discussion tonight is called LifeQuest Road 68, and here's a slow pan of what you'll recognize as the softball fields to the east, 182 in view. This is, of course, a premium spot for a view of the location of the freeway. If you're headed westbound on 182, you take the exit to Road 68. We're seeing the parking lot of the existing LifeQuest here on the right. We'll end up seeing the building here on the right as well. You'll notice this property's sort of more barbell shaped, I guess, with a thin spot and about 4.52 acres in total. What you also will see as we go over here to the right, you'll see a property that I believe is also county property on the north side of LifeQuest. And then the softball fields are also county property, but leased by the city of Pasco for recreational purposes. And then you're also going to see just the beginnings of the hotel there as well. A lot easier to tell where you're at when you can see landmarks near it. And with that, our slow pan of our fourth property, and I know that we have Carl Cadwell here this evening, who will tell you a little bit more about this property. Carl.
Bill Lamson is also here, representing LifeQuest, and it's an exciting time for Pasco, and we're excited to see what's happening here. We thank you for the opportunity to share here.
Mr. Cadwell, I think you need to turn on your light there also. There you go, you got it. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
They have the material that Fred provided in printed form. They do have in front of them, so they have packets in front of them. I don't have an electronic copy of that packet though.
How do I get to the PowerPoint?
PowerPoint. Did you email me a PowerPoint?
Yes, I did.
Then I apologize. That is my mistake. And it's going to take me a minute to bring that up.
While we have a minute here, if you wouldn't mind indulging me just real quick. One of the things, if you'll notice on our agenda after the presentations is talks about board discussion. One of the things I do want to make sure the board's aware of is that under RCW 4230, 110, I believe it's E or F. I'd have to look it up for sure. But under executive sessions under Open Public Meetings Act, you have pretty broad authority to retire to executive session to have confidential discussions about site selection. So this is a pretty broad area that you can have these discussions initially or after in executive session. And I would recommend obviously taking advantage of that because the board can have those discussions without having to and have frank conversations about those for site selection. So if you would like to do that this evening, obviously that's an option. If you would like to just take in the presentations this evening and then have maybe some minor discussion tonight if in public, and then have an executive session the next meeting, whatever the board prefers. But I just want to make sure that you're aware that you do have some pretty broad authority for this particular type of item to have an executive session where you can have those frank conversations about exploring options without having to worry about having those in public.
Eric, what does minor discussion entail?
Well, thanks. Those were great, and we'll see you guys next time. No, I'm teasing, but I mean just basically acknowledging the presentations and then moving to an executive session either tonight or next meeting. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so we have the opportunity to make presentations, and then we have the opportunity to ask all the questions we want to ask to them, and have dialogue here. And then, if we wish, we can retire to an executive session to have discussion on specifics.
Specifics and all those discussions would be confidential so that you can have those, frankly, amongst yourselves in private.
So Debbie, if we decided to go into executive session, are you gonna coach me on the wording again? Yes. Okay, thank you.
My apologies, Carl.
It's okay, that's quick building. Right here.
So I'm one of the owners of LifeQuest and the Wellness Center at LifeQuest, and we look forward in long time to have this presentation with you. Do I have control here? Yeah, I do. This is your initial facility concept. You call for 4.61 acres and so many square feet, and we meet these criteria. I've been hearing 6. Here's your first layout that you had. We took your criteria and gave it to Terry Thornhill and said, Terry, take their facilities and all their square foot and put it on this property so we can see what it looks like and so that you can see what it looks like. And so we've done this. So this property is ready to go. You're going to open in 2025. You can be guaranteed you can open in 2025 on this property. It's there, it's done. And so this is the current LifeQuest facility. This is the freeway out along here. You can see it in that there. I jumped forward somehow. I must have hit a button. Anyway, this is all your square footages all laid out. This is the building. This is the future building. These are your fire accesses that are required. You have one for both sides. And this is the parking facility that has all the spaces that you require. But we have more than that because we would propose a shared parking agreement with this here. The properties that currently LifeQuest has paved for its members, and we don't basically have any use of our members currently on these far outer parking lots or parking spaces here. So this is your facility with the water slides, with the outdoor, with the indoor, all of the things that you require for doing this. Land purchase. We don't know what the price is, but if you go, it's going to be maybe around $10 a square foot. We have 4.56 acres ready to go today. If you had everything ready, you could start building today. But there's more than that because we also have the acreage that has all the additional parking with the shared parking agreement. So it's effectively about a 6 or 7 acres that you would have available here. It's already, the water is already to the site, the sewer is to the site, the natural gas is to the site, the electrical vaults are already in place with the wiring in it, and we'll have a shared parking agreement. So we have this ready to go site for you. We have unbelievable freeway visibility. That's a marketer's dream when you can just put those slides up in the air and everybody drives by and every kid goes, I want to go there and I want to go there now. It's already surrounded by 3 hotels. It's the center of your sporting and event centers now in Pasco. We have Ben Franklin Transit already is out there on Burden in walking distance. And we have found that when recreational services are brought together, there's really a lot higher utilization of all the recreational, much like shopping centers always bring their shopping or their different retailers together. And we're experiencing now as part of LifeQuest is when people come and they come to the baseball complex, we have more utilization of LifeQuest, and the same when the soccer tournaments are going on. So right now, this is the sporting complex of Pasco, and we would propose that this continue to be the sporting complex. You have the baseball fields, you have the Giza Stadium, you have the youth soccer fields out here, you have the ice arena here, you have the track facility here, and of course you have LifeQuest there already. So you have, this is the attraction where all the sports is happening and recreation is happening in the Tri-Cities today. Hotels, yes, we have, as you're probably aware, we have 3 hotels. There's My Place, there's the Hampton Inn, and the Holiday Inn are all within walking distance of here. And when we have these big tournaments that flood in here and fill up hotels, LifeQuest gets really busy because they come over there and they want to swim and they want to work out. And we have this happen on every time they have something happens here. And the same thing is going to happen to your water park facility if it's placed here also. One of the things that we're willing to talk about is the public-private partnership agreements. And this is something that you probably haven't addressed, but these are long-term agreements between a government and a private property, and they operate assets. They operate assets, they can be a variety of things, the private part of that is to provide the services for the asset that is owned by the public part. And the private party can be paid by collecting fees on entrance, or they can be paid from fees from users or from the government, or a combination of both. And the payment is always contingent, or almost always, on the performance of the private party. And it's something that you can consider, and we're willing to enter into that kind of agreement if that makes sense for you as a public facilities district or not. There are some examples of this here in the state. We have Thornbeck's that's in the Centralia area. And here they operate a pool. They do a lot more than that. They operate a complete health club that's owned by the city of Centralia. They also operate the pool that's owned by the city of Centralia and the school district. And this has been going on since, I think, it's 1994. And it's really been a great thing. And they're willing to share what's happened over there with you also, if this is something that's of interest to you. Bainbridge Athletic Club was actually purchased by the Metropolitan Parks and Recreation District in 2021. It was about 5.61 acres in there. So this is another one in which this is actually the opposite way, where the public facility purchased a private facility and is now operating it as a public facility. Here are some options in this private-public partnership. The PPFD can build the aquatics facility and enter into an operating agreement with LifeQuest, and we would operate that facility on behalf of the PPFD. The other is that PPFD could build the aquatics facility and have a cooperative membership with LifeQuest. In other words, LifeQuest would sell memberships to the aquatics facility, and the aquatics facility could sell memberships to LifeQuest. Another is that the city, we would be willing to entertain a purchase of the actual LifeQuest facility so they could already have their recreation center there and going, and it could be expanded on the property that's already there. So it could be the community recreation and senior center that the city is interested in doing. So you've already got big steps along the way to what they're doing there, what they want to do. So if you enter into an operating agreement, there's management of expenses. We take on the operation and payroll expenses. We take on the maintenance. By the way, we know how to maintain these facilities. We have facilities in the Tri-Cities already, and they have the same kind of commercial pumps and things that you would have. You would have more of them, but you would have the same size of pumps and chlorine systems and things that we're already operating. We know how to do this. We already have a staff at LifeQuest that's ready to manage and capable of managing an aquatic facility. We could also have the payment would go directly to the Pasco facility districts, and we would meet both the expectations of LifeQuest and the Pasco facility district. It'd be performance-based, and I think it mitigates the risk, the financial risk, especially to the city and to the Pasco facility district. And so here's the way it could work. Pasco would enter into a cooperative membership agreement with LifeQuest, offering a membership at LifeQuest. We would offer a membership to aquatic facilities. And let's say that we agreed that we're going to pay $15 a month for every membership at the LifeQuest to the Pasco Public Facility District. This would add about $400,000 a year coming into the Pasco Public Facility District, which is basically your negative cash flow on your pro forma. So you're no longer in a negative cash flow from what's happening there, and you don't have to be subsidized the way it is the current pro forma where it's standalone. So let's talk about the elephant in the boardroom a little bit. I had to put this in here just because I found the picture. But anyway, it's the congestion on Road 68 in Burden. And I know that's a concern to everybody, even a concern to us, okay? So let's talk about this a little bit. Man, I got two need it. So here's one thing that's happening, or is apparently happening. This is Road 76 with a different overpass than we just talked about that goes across here and goes right behind Walmart and goes clear over to Burden. And this is already in place. This is Chapel Hill roundabout right here. And this is going to add supposedly 5 or 6 lanes from what I've been understanding. And it takes about 2 years after funding to design and build this. That's what we were told. So here's the expert on it. Pretty much, okay. And this greatly relieves the pressure on Road 68 because those traveling from north of the freeway to south of the freeway and vice versa can take this path rather than going over Road 68. We have some other suggestions we'd like to add to that too. This is in the master plan. There's a $16 million to update. This is Road 68, to update Road 68 and make it with more lanes and to better serve the east and westbound traffic. So there's already a plan in place to upgrade what you're seeing at Road 100, also at Road 68 to get rid of the reduce and eliminate the congestion. This is one thing that's already happened at Burden. This has been a great improvement where the westbound traffic coming down Burden to Road 68, they've extended those turn lanes way down and designated one for eastbound and one for westbound. And I go out there fairly often and it's just works way better. I don't know if you've traveled down that way, but it's really an improvement that's already happened out there. We have another suggestion too. This is, well, for most, by the way, the traffic coming to where the LifeQuest facility is and to the public facility, they never hit Burden if they're coming off the freeway because they always turn on Rodeo Drive to get in there. So we're not really loading up the Burden intersection coming into facility. We do on exiting. Be very clear about that. One of the things that we think should happen with this plan is there should be another spur coming off of the westbound exit here and comes into, I would see a circle here that now you have traffic that wants to get to Burden could exit there and go north to Burden and south into the aquatics facility. We think that's something that the planning should look at, and we think that's very doable. There could be another one off of the other road, the overpass. And that's it. I had 10 minutes. Did I run over? I'm pretty close. I'm willing to take questions, but we also want to bring something that I don't think anybody else can bring because we've built facilities. We operate facilities, and you're at the point now where you've got the next step. You got to choose a site. You got to design a facility. You got to construct a facility, and you have to operate it. And we're here to help on every phase of that because we've been down that. We have expertise just from our experience that we'd be glad to share as part of this property. And it's ready to go. You can go tomorrow. It's a lot of work to go before you can go tomorrow. But
Just a couple of questions then.
Sure.
The parking lot on the
Bill, why don't
north
you come
side
up
of
here too
LifeQuest.
and just help us answer this.
Okay,
Go ahead.
yes, please. So the parking lot on the north side of LifeQuest, you guys own that? or
No,
who-
that's county.
That's the county?
Yes.
And so that's part of the
I don't
track?
think I have a picture of that. Yeah, this one right here, it's actually blocked off all the way around here, and they only use this portion. And this is owned by the county, and we propose that this would be one of the accesses in to the facility, to the,
So the parking agreement, there would need to be one with LifeQuest and then one with the county?
yes.
Kind of-
So we're saying we'll have this would be on a joint parking agreement. This would be with the county right here. You don't really need that much parking, but
And
That's,
it's the westbound on 182, and then you come off of the freeway, and you're talking about that spur.
Yes.
Who actually owns the off-ramp? Is that owned by the state or the federal
well,
government?
this is owned by state here, and this is privately owned, this little corner down here, and I couldn't tell you who that is. I've forgotten. Do you know? Yeah.
Carl, what's labeled as parcel 2 on this diagram, which is just north of the proposed site? Is that LifeQuest property?
Parcel 2. I'm not tracking with you.
on a different slide, Spence?
I got this one.
Spence, could you turn your mic on?
It's just on, it's labeled, it's just east of your building. That,
Am I on the right page here?
yeah, that, right there, that,
This is our property right here. Yes, that is LifeQuest property.
is that paved?
It is not paved.
So is
This-
that part of what you're offering us as for sale?
Yes. So what we're offering for sale is, if I can track around here very carefully,
That and the lower part as well.
and all this down here, out to that dark line right
And the
there,
total acreage for both pieces,
is 4.6.
and you've got this facility sitting on how much of that?
This, from here to here, is 4.6 acres.
Okay, so the diagram, it shows the aquatics facility at the southern end of that.
Yeah,
How much ground is that aquatic center taking up?
that's maybe half of it,
Okay.
so maybe 2 acres.
Okay.
You know, this is a 60,000 square foot building that's spec'd out here. This is a 60,000 square foot building there. That's the LifeQuest approximately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's 2 proposed overpasses that are either of them to include cars, or the one out closer to the new project, that's pedestrian and bicycle only?
This one, I showed you the
Or is the
picture
Road
of.
76 one pedestrian bicycle only, or does it include cars?
This is cars. This is 5 lanes, goes behind Walmart, all the way out to Burton. So, I'm sorry, Santa Fe.
Okay, so the
you.
roundabout on Chapel Hill would then, they're talking about an overpass to include cars to go out behind
Yes.
Walmart.
Yes, and if I were designing it, I would also put a westbound exit off of this one. So it joins there.
And just to be clear, from what I've understood, that maybe John would correct us on this, but these overpasses are contemplated for surface traffic and not to be interchanges with the interstate? And I see nods, that's true. So the overpasses are for surface traffic across the freeway and pedestrians, not as on-ramps to on 182.
Carl, could you go back to the slide that Spence had up there? That Spence asked you, well, even that one's fine. Yeah, that one, please. Or maybe go to the one, yeah, that one. So that's a parking lot that's north of, right there, is that, no, go to the LifeQuest building and then go directly east. That
Is
what-
not an existing parking lot.
What is that right now? That's just the dirt?
It's just dirt,
Okay.
yeah.
But the other parking lot is paved, of course, where the blue stripes are.
Yeah, this is all paved.
So then what you had Thornhill do for you, that's phase 1, but it does not include phase 2.
No, this is, let me go one more slide this way, wrong way, excuse me. This is phase 2 right here. See the dotted dark line around there? That's phase 2. So this is phase 1 and phase 2 all on here.
So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, so help me through this.
Sure.
Then if the district was able to come up with some sort of a shared parking agreement with the county on the north side, and then a shared parking agreement with LifeQuest on the south and west side, then that would open up that property just due east of LifeQuest for potential aquatic center growth or improvements? Am I making sense?
So here's LifeQuest right here, and you're
Yeah, so-
talking
so
just
that was
east
the-
right here.
So when you
You
guys
could make
put it
that,
all,
you could make that more water park if you would,
yeah,
because
that's
you'd
what I'm
have
trying to
more
ask.
than an,
Yeah, or parking, yes.
or more parking. Yes.
Because I don't want to use the word squeezed here too literally, but it's put phase 1 and 2 down in this area entirely.
We did that,
Yes, that's
you know, just because we want that freeway visibility of this here. That doesn't mean that portions of it couldn't be up here. You'd still have freeway visibility, but nothing like big water slides down here right on the freeway. That'd be seen eastbound and westbound.
So the 4.61 acres, though, that includes this and what is north of this yeah,
Whoops, excuse me.
yes, so that's the
Includes
4.6.
this and this.
Right, okay.
Yes.
There would be no reason, Mark, why you couldn't also infringe on the existing parking. If we wanted to take out that parking and use other parking, the facility could expand to what I would call the northwest there.
Okay.
All you would be disturbing is some existing pavement, but that
Yeah.
would be a cheap fix if you wanted to move that direction.
And by doing that, you'd make it more rectangular.
Yes.
Yeah. Might make it more user-friendly, but certainly an option.
We'd certainly be open to that. We already have to move our dumpsters.
Help me with this, help me with perhaps this naive question here then. How many other parties, when you describe the solutions to Road 68 and the traffic, how many other parties would we have to engage with to get that put together? We'd have to deal with the city, the county, the state, or who would?
John, you want to answer that? Thank you.
So the city is currently undergoing a number of projects to help with Road 68 congestion. The Road 76 overpass is an immediate need. I don't know the exact construction schedule. Next 2 to 3 years. I think they're currently close to the funding stage being completed, then they move to design and construction. The Road 108 overpass is on a timeline dictated by the development in the Broadmoor area. So that's a ways out, 10 to 20 years probably. There's a Road 100 pedestrian overpass, which I heard mention of a pedestrian overpass, and that's essentially to augment the Broadmoor overpass and add pedestrian facilities to that. When we get to the state routes, there's interaction with WashDOT. So the Road 76 overpass has been in coordination with them. There's some improvements at Broadmoor, and that's been in coordination with them. So if we wanted to do something that was modifying entering or exiting state routes, that'd have to be in coordination with WashDOT if that was different than what we were already planning to do. Does that answer the question?
Is
Yes.
that an impossible thing to do, or is that pretty straightforward? I don't know how WashDOT is to deal with. I'm asking a question.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So it'd be a process. So we would have to probably restart back at our transportation planning documents. A lot of the projects we have currently are the result of years of planning and some different documents that assess our needs and then figure out what projects would meet those. And that process has coordination with stakeholders like WashDOT. So if we were to do something substantially different than what was in those planning documents, it'd probably be a somewhat lengthy process of making sure that we start at the planning stage and figure out what those improvements would do to our infrastructure and how trips would reallocate if we did those things, and then move through that process with stakeholders and then come out the back end of that with an actual solution. So we have currently planned projects that have been through that process already that are the ones we've talked about already.
Go ahead, Leonard.
John, all three of these projects deal with transportation, moving across freeways, around, in, out, all that sort of stuff. And we've talked about 76 and 68 and 108. Walk us into 100 and what's proposed there to move traffic.
So the Broadmoor TIF improvements will be doing a few things. We're planning to modify the I-182 and Broadmoor interchange to increase the capacity of that interchange itself by adding some loop ramps. And we're also looking at widening Broadmoor and doing signalization improvements from the interchange up to Burns Road. Probably it varies a little bit depending on the TIF approach, but it'd either be from I-182 up to Burns or from I-182 up to Sandifer. And so those improvements are already scheduled and budgeted for.
Bring me back a little bit to Road 100 and the interchange coming off and leaving Road 100 coming on east and west.
So we'll be adding some additional ramps to improve the capacity of that interchange to get people, off the freeway or onto the freeway relative to Road 100. I believe so. I haven't studied the configuration too much, but yeah, it'd essentially be improving both north and southbound capacity on Broadmoor with that interchange.
Mark, if I may, going back to your question for a minute, we got into this topic not because any of this needs to be done to move into our property. It was only because of the concern of some people that 68 may be getting too congested. But by the time your facility's built, at least the Road 76 overpass and interchange is planned to be completed, the way I understand it. So that's the one that relieves it. These other things we've talked about here are for the purpose of making it even better if that becomes necessary. Like the spur off of the Road 68 exit to take traffic north to Burton and not even have to go to Road 68. That could be an improvement for all of us, whether you put your facility here or whether you don't. So if you wanted to take our property as is, it's plenty adequate to do what you want to do and could be done in a very timely manner. So if that answers your
Yes,
question.
it helps. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not that we have to do any of these things. Would be for the betterment maybe if people are concerned about it.
Well, it is better, it's helpful to address these questions that are out there on the front side.
Oh, yes.
So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, is there any more questions or comments for Mr. Lamson or Mr. Cadwell? Go ahead, Ray.
I have a couple of questions about the public-private partnerships that you talked about in the back end of your presentation. I didn't understand what you were saying. Something about $15 for every membership that you sell to your gym would come to the Aquatics Center?
I use that as an example to try to put a decimal point in a proper place for you. Let's say that we entered into an agreement where all the members at LifeQuest could use the facility over there. Now, we already have water at our facility, so not all of them would use it. In fact, our experience is that we don't know what percent that is, but it's maybe 10 or 20%. But we would say, okay, every LifeQuest membership can go use the aquatics facility, and we'll pay $15 a month to the aquatics facility to have that ability for every membership. And that's about $400,000 a year coming in to public facility district, which is kind of your deficit if you looked at when I looked at your pro forma, which who knows if that's real. I mean, I build pro formas too, and I question whether they're ever real.
Yeah, well, and the significant part of that to me is that you have plans to do your phase 2. I can't remember how many years downstream.
Like 12.
Over 15, something like that. With that extra revenue, you could get phase 2 put in place much quicker if that were desirable.
So are you thinking you would raise the cost of your memberships in order to offset what you're gonna pay the Aquatic Center? Or
I didn't quite hear all that.
are you gonna raise the cost of your memberships?
We don't have to.
You don't have to?
No.
Okay.
So let me give you a little business background from what we've experienced both at Columbia Basin Racquet Club and Court Club, now the Pacific Clinic, is that when we put in the water park, our membership jumped, okay? And I just assumed the membership's gonna jump, and it did at our facility, it did at theirs. And it was almost 800 memberships at the Pacific Clinic when we put in the water park. And so if we make that available, we're gonna get another 400 memberships at LifeQuest, because they're gonna wanna work out and go to the water park. I mean, that's really what people wanna do. And so from that 400 increase, we can afford to pay that 15 without increasing. Is that kind of the business side of it, what you're asking there?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it makes sense to us, okay, to be in partnership with a facility like this right next door. And it's gonna make sense to you to be in partnership with a facility like ours right next door to yours. You know, shared parking, shared memberships, increased traffic all the way around. You're gonna get a lot of feedback from the people going. Every kid that goes to a baseball game is gonna drive by there and says, Mom, I wanna go to that water park. And then Mom's gonna say, okay, we'll take you after the game. You know, that's the kind of stuff. I mean, I had kids, I know how that works.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, John. Thank you. Matt, back to you.
Just a couple of thoughts, because you've gotten a lot of information tonight, and I also have heard a lot of great questions. My hope is that you're going to have discussion, because you're going to need to make a decision where to build a facility. It's not expecting you to make a decision tonight, but that's a decision that's going to need to be coming up here in the not too distant future. I also want to want to make sure if there's any unresolved questions overall with these, all of these properties, if there's anything else that Mr. Bedford heard that maybe has any clarification needed, that's an option there as well. And just also to note that later on in the agenda, I'm going to be talking about an owner's representative, and if we bring that person on, or that firm, they may have some expertise and talent and suggestion on this. And I have a feeling, since that RFQ closed out, they're probably also the potentials winner of that is going to be watching tonight's meeting, and might have 2 cents worth on that as well. So something to be thinking about, and I'm hoping that you've gotten enough information to be able to make a decision on these 4 sites, or be able to, what kinds of questions that you need to have answered going forward so that you can make a decision. John, any other thoughts?
Something that some people do when looking at sites like this, because there's a lot of things that are unknown in terms of, hard costs for development, exactly what a permit requirement might be for a specific site. Sometimes people pick their most likely candidate, and they do something around a 5 or 10% design with the ultimate goal of getting to a cost estimate. And that usually flushes out some potentially unforeseen issues that we might not be able to see from presentations at this high level. And so I was talking with Matt briefly, I think it was this week or last week, about that being a possible path that this board might be interested in, because it would take some of the big burden of making, forecasting all possible issues, and get you the ability to say that this site, looks good, but not have to make a hard commitment and actually purchase it and then figure out what the consequences would be later. But you could, as another approach, choose to get probably an engineering consultant to do a 5 or 10% design, a feasibility level analysis, look at traffic, look at parking demands, look at building footprints, see how the buildings might fit into a site, coordinate with city staff to determine what improvements might be needed at a specific site, whether it was traffic improvements, utility improvements, what parking restrictions there might be. All those sorts of things could get fleshed out before you actually purchased a piece of property. And that could potentially avoid an unpleasant surprise later after you were already a couple steps down a process. It would also help you get a better sense for budget as you're starting to learn what budget you have available. You could start to balance that with what a particular site might actually cost you, both in terms of the site and then also in terms of other improvements you may be obligated to make if you developed there.
I guess I have one word so far after the presentations, and I guess I'd just like to say, wow. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Yeah, a lot to think about, and then, Matt, this is obviously live and it's also being taped. So the owner's representative will have an opportunity to watch this presentation. And then as far as tonight, an executive session, I mean, I have a lot to roll around in my mind that each group that presented tonight has caused in my thinking that I've got to enlarge my thinking somewhat, you know? There's awful lot of moving parts to this. I myself am not ready for an executive session tonight. I think that, tell me in our executive session then, Eric, what are we going to be able to talk about and perhaps decide and not decide?
Sure. So one of the nice things about an executive session is you can have you can invite whoever you want to it. It's a confidential process, so that you can have folks if you have questions, say for example, city staff, and you wanted to have them present to be able to speak about some of the other options or some of the things that would be involved with each of these particular ones. But it's all the conversations and all the information. Essentially what you would be doing is just processing this massive amount of data that you've received today, be able to get a chance to go through them essentially in a workshop setting, kind of with just yourselves to kind of go through it, and then be able to ask questions of staff and others so that you can kind of deliberate that. No final decisions or anything like that can be made in executive session, but it does give you the opportunity to have those deliberative discussions that you would want to have candidly without having to go through a more formal process. You can do that confidentially.
But just a follow-up question here, Leonard, and then I see your light is on. So then would we be able to invite any of these gentlemen individually to our executive session?
You can invite outside folks from your organization, but
We wouldn't be limited to just city folks.
you wouldn't. But when you do that, you do lose confidentiality for that particular portion.
Okay. So they would only come in individually, though. We wouldn't, and then we basically would ask our questions and be careful about keeping that tone in the questions to a general discussion.
It just matters what conversations you would want to keep confidential. But that's the only concern about having folks that aren't covered by your privilege of the executive session. In the executive session, the communications that they're privy to are no longer confidential.
Would the owner's representative be able to attend our executive sessions?
And they would that would be confidential because they will be your contractor.
Would the owner's representative be able to contact any of these gentlemen
Certainly.
individually?
Absolutely.
Okay. And would that owner's representative, would that person need to be pre-coached, so to speak, to come with our questions, or are they at liberty to?
Up to you. It sounds like based on the requirements for the RFQ that folks will be submitting, it really sounds like they're going to be just that. Your representative to the board at this point is the owner, and they'll be representative. And so whatever task you want to put them on.
Okay. Leonard?
Yeah, I would be in favor of an executive session with the board and barrister and Matt and the engineer, who are kind of my picks, because this has opened up a great deal of questions to me, and I would like to have the ability to discuss those in a confidential manner and have the city engineer there, the city attorney there, and Matt, and then kind of, while it's still fresh in my mind, sometimes if you put a little bit of space between it, you lose some of the concept.
So you want to do this tonight?
Yeah, I would.
Well, one of the things you could do, and I just throw this out, you could set a special meeting where that's all you do is the executive session. So we could come back in between now and whenever your next meeting is, if you would want. If there's another time where you would want to take some time, digest these materials, be able to have staff be able to maybe prepare a little more, get some, because it sounds like there's still some details that need to be gone and gotten. That could be helpful for that executive session. That would just be my recommendation, but I understand, time is precious and having to come in and meet for a couple hours in an executive session. But that would be my recommendation. I've seen that work really well because then it can be very productive, because a lot of those questions can be answered, follow-up can take place, and then folks can get the answers that they're really looking for.
Spence?
I agree with Leonard. I'd like to have at least a short executive session so that we can maybe flush out some questions that we may have that we could get answers for prior to our next meeting.
I mean, I'm okay with it. My hesitation is that how the owner's representative, and maybe Marie, you'd want to comment on this, the owner's representative would fit in somehow in this decision-making process. And I wouldn't want to get ahead of ourselves.
I wouldn't presume that we would. We could have an executive session this evening, and then if we need either another session or more input later, it doesn't preclude that as an option.
You're always entitled to have more than one executive session.
That's what we want, meetings. We want lots of meetings.
Right.
Mr. Chair, may I suggest that if you did, you take a 5-minute break and then do an executive session for a 15-minute period with, as you've noted, the board members, myself, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Podvoric, and of course, Ms. Ferguson would guide us to make sure that we talk about only those things that we can discuss during executive session. And the point of the executive session also, as I mentioned earlier, want to make sure that you have all of the information that you need to be able to make a decision. If not tonight, certainly later on, but before we finish this meeting tonight, maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity of what things that you do need to have answered would be the hope of what we do here in public and then potentially in the executive session.
Marie, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think there's value in getting together in an executive session to discuss our first impressions and come up with a list of questions. And then if we have more detailed questions that we want to send the owner's rep out to answer for us later, we can do that.
I'm okay with that. Debbie, are you putting together the motion or the wording for the executive session?
Well, you do have an executive session on your calendar, so you don't need to motion to do it.
Well, she puts together how I'm supposed to read this. So.
I'm sorry?
I struggle with big words.
Are you thinking of going to executive session now or where it's at on your current agenda? Because you currently have it on your agenda as item 10.
Yeah, number 10.
So I would recommend keeping it there, and then you don't have to do the motion.
No, then adjournment. Okay, just give me a minute here.
Mr. Chair, if you have a choice here, we have been going for about an hour. I could rocket through section 9 of the agenda. There's 2 items on there. Then take a break and then do the executive session.
Okay, just a minute. So then, Debbie, basically what you're saying is I will read this part when we get to the executive session. It'll be this part which will concern with consideration for item C.
And you'll say that.
And I'll say that. And then the 15 minutes until, okay. All right. I think I'm ready.
And my suggestion on 15 minutes, we've never done anything in 15 minutes. And I've been this 20 years.
Yeah. All right, that is so true. Good night, gentlemen. Thank you. You guys can go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we go to item number 9, other business, and the executive director's report. Take it away, Matt.
And I'll keep it brief, but we have had a successful request for a quote for an owner's representative that finished on Monday morning. We had 4 respondents, and in front of actually Ms. Gillespie and Mr. Morissette are 2 packets of information is your designates to be on an evaluation committee. Have not been able to look through those extensively, but just cursory look through the 4. I think we've got some wonderful responses. I think you're going to find that process. You're going to find yourself a decent owner's representative in the coming weeks. The general process for that is the evaluation team, which includes, as I said, Ms. Gillespie, Mr. Morissette, myself, Mr. Radkai, and also a designee from the Public Works Department, go do a written or a reading evaluation and a scoring. The plan and hope would be then that they would turn those documents in by next Wednesday. And City of Pasco staff have been very helpful cataloging all of this. We then would go and try and schedule interviews for whoever that committee wants to shortlist. whether it be all four of them or maybe a subset of those. And after then interviewing with that committee, then that committee recommends a first choice. We negotiate with that owner's representative, and then if the terms are agreeable, there is potential for being able to come back to the April meeting with a actual owner's representative for the board to approve. There is a couple questions on that also depending on when we have the meeting. That's the general process for that, and I think we're well on the way to getting an owner's representative for that and other things. That's my summary then of for the owner's representative and my report this evening. Other than I think we also did touch on a couple of things, expecting a financial report in the April or May timeframe. Also, the tax analysis information, I'm working on the contractor with that to get that completed. Made some forward progress and also anticipate that either in the April or May timeframe. And all those pieces of information are of course important for that larger picture of what we can afford, where we're going to put it, who's going to help us build it, and that sort of question. That would conclude my report this evening.
Thank you. Item B, other business update related to work groups to support the board members. Eric.
Great. So one of the questions that came up last time related to potentially creating work groups and what that would actually look like, and was there any particular formal process that currently was allowed. I can report that we've reviewed the bylaws and the charter, and I have nothing to report. There's nothing in there about anything that would be remotely close to this. So the only thing that I really found that that may speak to this is that both the president and vice president can. Let me read the actual language. And generally shall perform all duties incident to the office of president or such other duties as may from time to time be assigned to such office by the board. Same thing for the vice president. So the only reason why I bring that up is that's something that you could, the board could delegate to either the president or vice president to essentially set up that process. But quite frankly, it doesn't even need to be that formal. It doesn't sound like there's any prohibition. The only concern that I could see is that it would be at the discretion of the board about how you would want to utilize it, how you want to advertise for it, how you would want to conduct those meetings. The only thing you need to be careful of is not to have a quorum so that you would or accidentally create a public meeting so that you could handle that. And then really just determining what the role of those folks that would be participating in those quote work groups may or may not be. So the only danger or the only major legal concern would be there can't be obviously any delegation of authority of the board to a work group that has non-members on it. We can't do that. But other than that, they can work and volunteer and provide whatever direction that the board wants to give those, or if we want to have it be a certain committee. However that committee wants to utilize those services is really open season.
If I understand what you're saying, then Eric, correctly, that we wouldn't add committee members. Instead, we would have these work groups that the president and the vice president could just request, or how do we?
You could do it either. You could do it either way, but they wouldn't be quote committee members. Right. So we'd have to be careful about that.
A work group.
Yep. It's just
so a work group maybe would be assigned a specific task.
Mm-hmm. Essentially volunteers to that particular committee or volunteers to the president and vice president. You could do it that way if you wanted, either way.
Well, I'm trying to understand though, they would be volunteers to the committee, which would give them
direction.
Their existence would be in basically as long as the committee's in.
Or not. Yeah, it could be very informal. It wouldn't have to be something that you outline. You could just basically take volunteers, and if you decide that you want to no longer utilize that, I don't think that there's anything that would require it to be formal. It could be up to the committee chairs.
When we ask for volunteers, would it be we would be able to find specific community members who we would ask to volunteer, or would it go through just a literally a volunteer process.
You could define that if you would like, so that you could either have the committees define what they're really looking for and how they want to utilize that, or I think the board could delegate that authority to the president or vice president.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I think in my mind, it's kind of like if we get to a point where we want to appoint a few citizens to do the interior designer to help us with the colors and that kind of stuff, you appoint kind of a group of volunteers to do that, and they have that task.
Essentially, yep.
And I'm not sure exactly how this unfolds, if we are able to get what we need from the owner's representative, or do we need to have these volunteers for these work groups? I'm not quite sure how that
Great
works.
question. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. Mr. Watkins, I think we didn't get a chance to sync up on this issue, and I didn't know if he had more information that you want to share.
Yeah, and I appreciate, Eric, the legal question here, and very careful not to supplant your responsibilities. I think you're going to be able to find willing and able members in the community to volunteer and help. One of those lists we could look at potentially are maybe people that applied to become members of the Public Facilities District and weren't chosen, for an example. There may be also, as I pointed out too, when I met with the Parks Commission, they're standing by and available for potentially to assist as well. I think you're finding willing volunteers. Or as Spence points out too, as we get deeper into the design process, that's also, I think, also overlaps into the community involvement question, which I think you've asked me as director to be involved with. And while it's premature, it's something I've been contemplating and would absolutely reach out in the community as well for people who are interested. I don't think we're quite there yet, but your questioning earlier on makes sense.
And just to be clear, the only thing that legally that I think we would need to do to be able to establish these groups and where is just whatever the board decides. We would want to do it in a resolution so that it's clear what the expectation is, so that anyone who would be involved in it would know that either the chair of the committee is the one who's going to be giving them direction, or it would be somebody else. So whatever we decide, it looks like we can pretty much do whatever we want, but we just would want to put it in writing and make it essentially a policy going forward, and we do that through a resolution.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I believe it needs to be in writing so we understand what the direction is. And I'll go back into my 60-day process. Last month, we had a member here that was asking for help. And we need to supply that help as soon as we can. And if it's a matter of staff coming up with the written language for a resolution, it should be done as soon as we can, not 3 months from now, so that when the opportunity comes to appoint a group in this working fashion, that it's there available to jump upon.
Okay. Any comments, Marie?
I guess I would just put out there that I've already started putting feelers out to the community to find helpers in my volunteer work in the schools. I have already talked to principals and teachers and asked them, do you have anyone who'd like to help? You know, the teachers or people on the PTA or just moms who are very involved. So I'm confident I'll be able to find the help. If we need to write this resolution so that I can hit the ground running when the owner's rep comes, hopefully in another month, then please start that now. I do want to circle back to the owner's rep evaluation process, Matt. So am I to understand that inside these packets is everything that we need, including the evaluation criteria, and we're to turn into you our written evaluations before we meet together as a group and before we interview?
Yes, and if you Mr. Morissette could wait after the meeting, I would like to talk with you two specifically and walk through that.
Okay.
Is that process set? Because I'm used to doing the written and then the group coming together and discussing before we turn in our final answer.
The part is set is that Pasco staff have been very helpful, and you'll find a cover memo and that they've asked to have the material returned by next Wednesday. That's as far as it's been set at this point. And I'd like to talk with you after the meeting about what follows on from after that after the Wednesday or before the Wednesday. And
Okay.
the three of us could figure that out.
Okay.
And if you don't mind circling back, Mr. Dietrich's point about setting these things in forward, I'd just ask, I'm asking Mr. Ferguson to prepare a draft resolution to consider the discussion that we've had tonight to be open-ended, to be able to, if we do find helpers for whatever we need help with, to have the mechanism for that. And can you have that draft for the next meeting for consideration?
Sure, yeah, and to Mr. Dietrich's point, because I know he's mentioned it a couple of times, one of the things that I think we're starting to run into here is the way we typically support boards, commissions, councils is we stay in our lane, we do some research, we come back, we get that feedback, we take that, we make sure that we don't get ahead of our skis, for lack of a better expression. This board, it's a little tough because all our other boards or other commissions or councils that we meet with, obviously they meet weekly. So we're able to kind of get that feedback much quicker. And I think what one of the frustrations that Mr. Dietrich's referring to is really one of the problems is that the typical way of making sure that we don't kind of get ahead of our skis is tough, because then that means we're doing a 60-day turnaround on a lot of these things. And so I think really, what we need to know is, or what I need to know, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to have everybody else jump in my canoe with me here. But I need to, if I've got, if you want me to take those directions and make those assumptions without having come to you, one of the things that I'm very careful about doing is making sure that I'm not making assumptions on what you want to do or not do, and then come in and be accused of telling you how you feel. So if that's the case, I'm happy to be more assertive with regard to taking the lead on some of those things. I mean, I very easily could have come back with a resolution to do exactly what we talked about, but that's not typically my place, and I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of that. But at the same time, if that's causing frustration because we're not being assertive enough to get some of these things done and get them off your plate, I want to know that too.
Yeah, I would think that a communication that you could have in the interim between 60 days is with the director, the president or chair, and the committee chair. And then you 3, 4 can come up with, yeah, okay, I really like this. We can present it to the board. The board buys off on it or tweaks it a little bit. But you would have direct contact with the chairs of the committee that, yeah, this fills my needs and I agree with it. And then you can move on with it at that point in time. I can understand your frustrations, because where the hell am I going?
Jumping off just a little bit to another subject then, the April board meeting is on April 18th. Now, what kind of an agenda are we looking at for the April 18th board meeting?
Potentially an owner's representative, appointment to that or approval of that. We have, of course, updated budgets. We're going to have the tax picture. Imagine that's going to be some interesting information. And then also looking, and then you put me on the spot, I mentioned it earlier. The tax analysis is also coming up. And I would imagine dividing that between the April and the May meeting is
so
roughly split those between those two.
Board members and Matt, would you guess then that we're not going to make a decision on the location until we have an owner's representative on board and kind of help us with working through that information? Okay, so then here's my question then, is at the April 18th board meeting, I don't know if I'll make that meeting or not. And I don't know if anybody else will have trouble making that meeting, and that'd still be 4 people, and it sounds as if the agenda then, I mean, I want to be at a board meeting when we're making decisions, and especially about the location, but if the April 18th board meeting, the agenda is going to be more along the lines of the work group to, that you'll put something together for the president and the vice president to work through that process. And it's gonna be the owner's representative. We won't actually do the selection, or are you expecting we'll do the selection?
Selection.
Selection, okay, so that's fine. So, and then as far as other items on the agenda, the financial report, which I can see on my own anyway, so I don't, is there any reason why we should? I would like to see it moved, but it doesn't have to be moved just for me, because it sounds like the agenda is, as long as they're not gonna make a decision about the location, then I'm okay with the April the 18th board meeting, Leonard?
Yeah, my only comment on that is I'm scheduled to be here, but that's not a problem because I can move the ticket around, okay? The issue that I have is I will be driving back from where I'm at on April 30th. It's going to be very difficult for me to be on the 26th, back south on the 27th, and then turn around 4 days later and do it. So it needs to be timed a little bit. And it could be moved around days, just recognize that it's going to be, I start out at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing this, but that's okay. If we need to move it to facilitate issues, I have no problem with that. I can work around it.
So you say maybe we won't have an April board meeting and do this in our May board meeting?
No.
I'm not sure what I'm saying. Well, I'm just trying to.
I'm saying we can move it. I don't know how far you, I'm not sure how far you are off on the 18th, whether the 20th and 21st or the 23rd, 24th, something like that. Yeah, it'd be the 23rd because that's a Monday. But something like that, you can move it. Just give me a week to pack my clothes and come back home.
Well, the only day back for me is April 18th.
Okay?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. You know, it goes. I'm not gonna say I'll be working until midnight, but it can be a long day. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, what I see is a conflict between a snowbird and tax season.
Yeah.
And the question is whether to defer it 1 week, because we tend to have the room available the same day of each week. I don't know if the clerk has any visibility of any other days of the week, since you say, Mr. Morse, it's just the 18th that's the issue?
Yeah,
Or
it's
is
just the 18th.
Just the 18th.
Well, I mean, leading up to the 18th is gonna be a problem.
Leading up to
something
so
earlier is gonna be a problem, but after the 18th is fine.
And I don't know if, Debbie, how you could look, take in just a second here, if either the 19th or the 20th, which would be a Wednesday or a Thursday, but I'm also looking at the group of 5, would you be able to do a Wednesday or a Thursday instead of a Tuesday meeting?
For me, yes, but I don't know what the other people's schedule.
Any Spence, Marie, or Caroline, any issue?
Well, things can be changed
What's that?
around, so I guess I can say yes, and as long as I have enough notice to change anything else.
All right, so it looks like on Wednesday, the 19th, the council chamber is open. We'd also need to make sure that John would be available for that, to record that. On the 20th, again, it looks like it's open for the time frame. We're looking at 4 to 6, right?
So would the 19th or the 20th be okay, the day after or 2 days after with
For
that
me,
group?
for me, yes.
Okay.
What about everybody else? Okay.
Okay. I'll check with John to see if any of those days, and if we can make it work for the 19th or the 20th, would that be okay with you, Mr. Dietrich?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So with that, we are planning then the next meeting, either the 19th or the 20th, and we'll notify you for sure which of those 2 dates, same time in this council chambers.
Good. Okay, so then, now, we still gonna go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay. And Leonard, you mentioned about
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay, so that would,
May I make the suggestion that we take a 2 or 3 minute break and then do the executive session?
all right, we
And
can do
then
that.
suggest that you do the executive session until 6:35.
So you'd say we're gonna come back in here in 2 minutes, 1 minute now.
Excuse me, how about 6:40?
6:40, okay, good. So we're gonna break until when?
6:40.
No, this break right now, you're 2 or 3 minutes.
For 5 minutes and then do the executive session. and then
6:20,
be
we'll come
at
back in at
6:40.
6:20 then. Okay, very
And-
good.
And might need some assistance then, which you've got your script for doing executive session, Mr. Morissette?
Yes,
Well,
I have
this
it.
would be the time to do that then.
To read this?
Yeah, so what you wanna say is we're gonna break for 5 minutes, and then after we get back from the break, then you're gonna say you're gonna go into executive session.
Okay, but Debbie, you say it so much better. All right, so it's approximately 6:15, and we're gonna break for 5 minutes until 6:20. And then when we come back at 6:20, we'll break into an executive session that is gonna last, I'll read that then, but it'll last 20 minutes. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mark, turn your light on.
Sorry about that, thank you. It is now 6:20 PM and the Pasco Public Facilities District Board meeting will now return to its regular meeting. And we will now meet in executive session to discuss consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate purchase or lease if likelihood that disclosure would increase price per RCW 42.30.11 parentheses 1 parentheses lowercase b. And we'll be back at 6:40. It is 6:41 PM, and the Pasco Public Facilities District Board is extending the executive session for a period of 10 minutes until 6:51 PM. So it is 6:52 and I call the regular meeting back to order. So we've just finished the executive session portion of our agenda, which we now go to item number 11, adjournment. Is there any other business to come before the?
I would just re-emphasize the executive session is,
Turn your mic on there, Leonard, and then I guess we're good.
I just want to emphasize that the executive session is not to be discussed outside those doors.
Okay, got it. Caroline?
And then we adjourn.
Well, it's been moved to adjourn. Does that require a second? Nope. So then everybody, will see you either April the 19th or the 20th. Thank you.
And you'll let us know, Matt?
Yeah.